it won't happen now because there's a time of war in Israel. But there's going to be hell to pay by those Israelis who messed up the tunnel business. They should have known. They know they should have known. We don't have geologists. We're the smartest people in the world. Now is not the time that there's going to be anger publicly at that. But that will come. There are tunnels in America, and the ideological tunnels. And those tunnels have been dug under our feet and our security and our well-being and our peace for the last 25 years. And those tunnels are the media, the professoriate on colleges, the liberal churches, the mosques in America. 80% of the mosques in America are run and controlled by radicals, according to congressional testimony. And I could tell you all about Boston, you would not be happy. And now the K-12. So in 1989, I discovered that Arab propaganda was being taught in American classrooms, incorporated into basic teaching tools. Let me just give you some quotes. Junior Scholastic, remember that, those days, Junior Scholastic? Here's a quote. The Intifada has been an uprising of Palestinian children. From Newsweek's social studies program, Yasser Arafat has made tremendous concessions in the hope of bringing Israel to the bargaining table. From My Weekly Reader, imagine yourself a Palestinian teenager living in a refugee camp in Syria. In a letter to an American student, write about what you would feel the future holds for you. Okay. PBS produced a teacher's guide which taught in Jewish eyes, the Arab is dirty, lazy, thieving, incompetent, and uppity. So I wrote in Moment magazine in 1991, it was not too difficult to see how a black child sitting in an American classroom would react to those hateful words. So our research discovered entire units and modules and courses that were meant to influence the way the Middle East and Israel was taught in the schools. In 2005, the JCRC in San Francisco created a group called Institute for Curriculum Services, and they now vet all of the textbooks, or as many as they can, in the public schools. In 2008, Gary Tobin, of blessed memory, who was a hero of our people, and Dennis Ybarra published The Trouble with Textbooks, and they did a massive study and review of textbooks in the public schools. And what they also did, which was new, was they looked at supplementary materials. Once the other side, and I'll tell you about who the other side is in a minute, figured out that textbooks could be vetted and challenged and changed, they started using supplementary materials that they could hand out in teacher workshops that went around the back of the school authorities. And so the most famous one was the Arab World Studies Notebook. So now I'm going to tell you about, by the way, Tobin and Ybarra enunciated 12 pro-Islamic, pro-Arab, pro-Palestinian groups who were seeking to influence the textbook. So I'll name a few. You might know them. The Aramco Company of Saudi Arabia. The Arab World and Islamic Resources, AWARE. CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations, which is the Hamas front. The Middle East Policy Council, MPEC. Dar el-Islam, the Islamic Network, etc., etc., etc. And the Arab American Anti-Discrimination Committee. They're smart. They know how to do that. Okay. No Jewish organization has been tasked with taking on the large problem of K-12, with the exception of this group in California. And what they do only is textbooks. Okay. So I recently wrote a piece in the Jerusalem Post that kind of scanned these things across America. And we came up with things like one teacher has students debating whether or not the Holocaust happened. Many teachers have exercises in which they debate a one-state or a two-state solution for the Middle East. Now think about that. In other words, The debate is, should there be a Jewish state? Right? Should there be because if it's a one-state solution, there's no Jewish state there, right? So we're not debating whether the Sudanese who killed 3 million Christians and enslaved hundreds of thousands, we're not debating whether they should have a state. We're not debating whether the Germans deserve to have a state. We're debating whether the Jews should have a state. Okay. Okay, so let me tell you about Newton, Massachusetts, which is a leafy Jewish suburb with wonderful people, some of whom are here. So that all these things start with an initial outrage. And the initial outrage here was a girl comes home and she says to her dad, "Is it true that Jews in Israel kill Arab women in jail?" What? And the father goes to the school, and it turns out it comes from the Arab World Studies notebook, which I knew from 1989 was a Saudi product, and which had been snuck into the schools. Wait till you find out who snuck it into the schools. And so the father goes and he says, "You know, what are you doing?" "And I want to see the whole curriculum." "Can't see the whole curriculum." "What is this?" "Well, it's a point of view." That's POV. They actually call it point of view. So they have a point of view, and the Arab point of view is that the Jews kill Arab. But that's not really the Arab point of view, because if the Arabs actually thought that Israelis were killing their women in jail, they would resist to the death any arrest, right? And they would certainly tell the New York Times about it. So it's not really the Arab point of view. So we fought like anything to get this out of the school. And the school committee, and we said to the school committee, "Look, you made a mistake. We're not saying you're anti-Semitic. Somebody slipped it by you, right? So help us out. Say you made a mistake. Take it out of the classroom. But please also go tell those kids that the Jews don't do that. It's not true." They wouldn't take it out for a year. They wouldn't go back and find the kids, right? And at the end, when they were forced to take it out because of grassroots pressure, they said, "We took it out because it was outdated." So I said, "You mean the Jews no longer kill Arab women in school?" Horrible. Next. So how do they teach about Islam? They have a book in Newton High School called The Muslim Primer, one of whose main sources is Yusuf Qaradawi. You well know Yusuf Qaradawi, but you should, because he's a spiritual leader of the Muslim Brotherhood. He's also one of the trustees of the Boston Mosque. They wrote, "Jews betrayed Muhammad." That's in the text. They have handouts along with this book that says, I kid you not, the Muslim world is a world where womanhood reigns supreme, where women are freer than Western women who apparently have less control over their destiny. Okay. So that's Islam. It's all good. By the way, you have to understand what's happening. What's happening is that the teachers are steeped in the theology of political correctness. Okay? So let me give you. So if you believe in the axioms and the presuppositions of the theology of political correctness, Israel is not going to come out good, and every non-Western culture is going to have a Teflon coating. So what are the, well, there is no truth. There's no truth. All cultures are morally equivalent. Nobody's better than anybody else, right? If you're nice to the other guy, he'll be nice to you, right? Poor people and darker-skinned people have a higher moral claim. That the problem of the world is that the powerful have too much power and the powerless have too little. So what you have to do to make peace is to take power down from the ones who have power and empower the weak ones so there's an even playing field. And there is no natural reason for humans to have conflict that can't be worked out over a Starbucks. So if you believe all of those things, Israel's not going to turn out very good. And if you're a teacher, you want to make peace. So why would you tell students the hard truths, the negative truths about other cultures when you want to make peace with those other cultures. Why would you say to people, Arabs have black slaves today, you could buy one for $20? Why would you ever do that? You wouldn't do that, right? Or why would you ever say, clitorectomies aren't so good? Or why would you ever say that in Muslim countries, gays are hung in the city square? Why would you ever show a kid a picture of gays hung in the city square if your object is, with this template of political correctness, that you have to make peace? Right? Why would you ever tell anybody that Christians are crucified in a jihad? You would never do it, and they don't. And so when these curricula come into the schools, the teachers think they're doing God's work, making peace. So, next. So, turns out, I'm sure you've seen these maps, right? This is like the big lie map about Israel. In so many ways, it's a big lie. I'll just give you, one is, this is 1948, 1960. The reason that the Arab control shrunk was because they lost a genocidal war that they declared against the Jews. If you lose a war and the other guy wins, you could do this with many wars, you lose territory. Not that the Jews were sitting there from the beginning trying to gobble up your land, right? And by the way, if you zoomed out and you saw the Middle East, you would see, starting in 700 about, Islam conquered all of the North Africa, forcibly converted the folks there. So you could do a map on them if you wanted to. Nation states are by nature systems of conquest proprietorship, right? I can't think of a nation state that didn't win its borders by beating up somebody else or by being given land by a previous owner like Iraq, right? Anyway, that's what they hand out. And guess where it comes from? Next. It comes from the PLO. They don't say when they hand out these maps in the schools that this is a PLO document. They say this is. Okay, so I got a parent from Newton who, by the way, will not go public because, why won't parents go public? Because they don't want their kids to, suffer. They want, they don't want, we're Jews. We invest every last dime in our kids so they can become a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, right? So we're not going to mess that up by having the teacher be mad at our kid. And we don't want to make, except amongst ourselves is different, but with other people, we're conflict averse, except amongst ourselves, right? So I can't get this mother to come out, and I know her, and I've known her for a long time. She's great. And her kid really felt horrible that they were saying about him and his people that we're land thieves, right? Okay, next. Okay. This is my favorite example. Now, there's 2 points of view about what's the cause of the war, of the conflict between the Arabs and the Jews. One point of view is that this is a border war. This is a war, a conflict about where the border is going to be drawn between where the Jewish population is and where the non-Jewish population is, right? That's the New York Times. That's the PC. That's the view that most people have, or want to have, or wish it were true, or pray that it were true. The other is what I told you in the beginning, that this is a war of civilizations. Okay? Now Hamas has a charter. Hamas has a charter in which it says, kill all the Jews. So it's not about borders for Hamas anyway. We're not going to talk about Fatah, but for Hamas, So why in the world, when you present a document to a student in a school, would you extirpate, whitewash what Hamas actually says? And that's what they did. They presented, this is the real Hamas document, right, about the Jews, and this is the fake, the Zionists. They say the Zionists. Instead of the Jews, they say the Zionists. Next one. Okay. So in the Hamas document, they use the word Jews 10 times. In the Newton Schools document, they took it out. Amazing. Now, why would anybody do that? Next. Here's why. because this is the class notes from a teacher. Don't ask me how I got this. Okay? Back. This is a fight, conflict over land. That's what we're teaching. It's a conflict over land. So I can't possibly give you the Hamas document, the real one. Can't do that. The main book used by the Newton Public Schools is by James Gelvin. He is an anti-Israel guy. He's a leader of the BDS, you know, BDS, Boycott, Divest, Sanctions movement. Right? So he wrote the book. He's a BDS guy. And his book was paid for by Sheikh bin Zayed bin Sultan when he was a visiting professor at the University of Beirut. He got a stipend to write the book. That's what we're teaching in Jewish Newton. Next. Compares the Zionist emigration to Palestine to the French settler plantation colony in Algeria. Right, we were the French, right? We left the motherland. I mean, if the Jews are a colonist is somebody who leaves his motherland to go somewhere else to steal stuff, right? Where's our motherland that we left to go to Israel to steal stuff? It's bizarre, it's crazy, but the left likes to talk about colonialism. Next. So where does all this come from? Well, it comes from Harvard University. It comes from Harvard University because Harvard University took, when I started the David Project, we successfully got Harvard University to give back a $2 million gift from that sheikh. We forced them to do it. It was one brave Jewish girl. Her name was Rachel Fish. She's a Jewish heroine. And she stood up to her dean, and she says, I'm not graduating until we turn back that gift, because she Googled the place where it came from, and it was anti-Semitic. How dare Harvard take $2 million? Well, we won that. But a couple of years later, they gave them $20 million, and we couldn't beat that. Reason is not going to beat $20 million. Okay. So they gave them the $20 million, and they have the Center for Middle Eastern Studies, which trains public school teachers. Good. And these two guys were in the workshops. The guy on the left, Dennis Sullivan, was just demoted from a position that he held as chairman of the Middle East Studies Department at Northeastern University, because we caught him on film saying, Hamas, not a problem. I mean, they do great kindergartens. Paul Beran is his protege. And Paul Beran is the director of the Harvard. So Paul Beran studied from him. Okay, next. And they gave workshops to Newton's teachers. Next. And here's Paul Beran's PowerPoint to Newton teachers. Okay? Look at the cores of the conflict. Not Islamic radicalism, not incitement to hate, not terrorist attacks on innocent Jewish babies. Those are not the cores of the conflict. Not Islamic Jew hatred, but the Palestinian view of what the core of the conflict is. So that's what he's teaching public school teachers from Harvard, paid for by Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia has its hand through Harvard into our public schools. Okay, next. So he's teaching people to be, some people talk about the Middle East, and they do it in a very unsophisticated way. That would be on the left. Israel is weak. The war is about religion. But the sophisticated way is on the right. You see? So you should be sophisticated. Next. Okay. So they also had a one-state, two-state debate. So here's how they set it up in this school. And I'm sure this is how it's happening all across the country. I'm sure. So the some kids get to debate for a one-state solution, and some kids get to debate pro the two-state solution. And how do they learn about these? Well, they're given a selection of readings from what they call prominent voices. So you're going to read at the pro-Jewish side, and you're going to read the pro-Arab side. Okay? Let's take a look at the prominent voices. So in the prominent voices, you have 3 Israeli leftists. Okay? You have Tom Friedman, who's some people would say he's neutral, I guess. No Palestinian politicians, but 5 radical anti-Israel and anti-Semitic activists, Tony Judd, John Spritzler, all these guys, they are the pro-Palestinian side. Next. So let me tell you about him. This guy is a prominent voice. He runs a thing called the Electronic Intifada, which is kind of the social media against Israel in the United States. It's amazingly well done. I'm sure he's got lots and lots of money. One of the best websites you could ever see. Teaches kids what to do on college campus to stop pro-Jewish activity. Okay? Next. And he writes things like, supporting Zionism is not atonement for the Holocaust, but it's continuation in spirit. So he's a prominent voice on the side of the Arab side. Next. So here's another prominent voice. And on his website, he's got an anti-Semitic thing. So by the way, when we showed this to the Newton schools, they run away. They don't want to talk about it. So Paul Beran is the guy in the middle who was leading the BDS movement in Somerville, and they lost. Next. So he figures out what to do. This was like 6 years ago. He says, we can't really beat them politically now because a lot of people like Israel in Somerville, in the cities. So what we got to do is we have to go into the schools and educate the children so that this won't be true in the future. You know who Bill Ayers is? It's kind of like a mini Bill Ayers. Next. Saudi money in this is a big problem. It's a great article by Stanley Kurtz. If you write to us, I'll send it to you. Next. So we asked the Newton School Committee. I'm a citizen, right? I don't have kids in the school, but I'm a taxpayer. Show me the curriculum. Well, we're not going to show you the curriculum. But if I ask for it with a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act request, well, it's going to cost you $4,000. Because we have to ask all the teachers, and they have to go gather all their stuff. And we have to interview every teacher. And we have to... That's good. Next one. And they actually told people not to compile the curriculum even, because people were looking for it. And then if it already was compiled, it wouldn't have to cost $4,000.